There is set to be a bonfire of EU red tape. And of course, many of you will be asking, why hasn't that happened already, Michael? Of course, we've left the European Union, left the transition period. Well, I think the way you've got to look at this is different changes will take different amounts of time. You look, for instance, at the success the UK has had outside of the EU, acting independent, acting in an agile manner on vaccines. That's happened pretty much straight away. But when you look at another area, you see this story now that the Treasury is preparing for a bonfire of EU red tape. Brussels' reluctance to grant financial market access leaves government poised to rip up the rulebook to boost London's trading status. With Britain now drawing up, the British government now drawing up plans to axe swathes of pre-Brexit financial rules. They're giving up hope that Brussels will grant the city widespread access to the single market, the Sunday Telegraph revealing. And the outlook on the UK side now seems to be that senior figures in Brussels now seeking to stall things, basically to try and steal business from London. With one Whitehall source quoted in this story talking about a bare bones deal on finance now being priced in, ministers believing the city fully prepared. The source quote is saying the situation was always going to be that we weren't locked in to the evolving rulebook. It was always going to be thin. Now, of course, Chancellor Rishi Sunak right at the heart of this story and is said to have offered equivalents to EU firms in a slew of areas last November, but there was no reciprocal move from the European Union. So there is now set to be a number of changes, getting rid of EU restrictions, with Rishi Sunak set to give a major speech said to be most likely to take place in July. But a new post-Brexit global outlook, the way forward now, with billionaire city tycoon Michael Spencer, a major Tory donor who actually voted Remain at the Brexit referendum, responding to the EU's posturing on this by saying this retrograde move necessitates that the UK make major steps to make London even more attractive for all financial services in the UK. In the long run, excluding, he says, the UK will prove to be a major error by the EU. All protectionism ends in failure. So the EU's approach on this, even Remainers there who know what they're talking about on this stuff, saying that this will be a major error by the European Union. But of course, we've seen all the way through. The EU, of course, terrified of Brexit Britain outside of the EU, gaining competitive advantage, and obviously other countries then looking at the UK as an example as they have on vaccines and thinking, blimey, why are we still in this block? Something I think you're going to see more of in the years ahead. And the Telegraph in an editorial as well, making this, underlining this point really that the UK has got to take a global approach rather than being tied into EU rules moving forward. Britain must capitalise, they write, on its freedom from EU red tape. Most of the market growth over the next 30 years will be in the East and Indian subcontinent, not Europe. And in that editorial, they say, underlining the point really again, Whitehall is now trawling through a great raft of financial rules introduced during the UK's membership of the EU to see what can usefully be jettisoned. The aim is to weed out the red tape that effectively locks us into a European orbit when global opportunities beckon. And I think this is the approach right across the board that we need to see from the UK, gaining competitive advantage, being independent and looking out globally across the world rather than being tied into an EU rulebook. Do let me know what you make of all of this, guys. And as ever, if you enjoyed this video, please do whack me a big thumbs up on this. I'd really appreciate that. Hit the join button to become a member and get the members only patriotic members badge next to your name. And of course, as ever, guys, thanks so much for watching.